a problem which affects many IELTS candidates and many people in life, including myself, which is anxiety, and when we feel anxious taking tests. So this lecture will talk all about how to manage those nervous feelings that can damage your IELTS score, particularly in the speaking test. Firstly, it's very important to recognize that anxiety is a universal problem. By this, I mean that almost everybody experiences nervousness. The first thing to recognize is that you are not alone, no matter how many times you've taken the exam. Sometimes it can actually be that the more you take the exam, the more nervous you feel. So it's okay. Anxiety is normal. If you think otherwise, you'll only make it worse. It's important to recognize that the anxiety is there, but try not to think any more of it. Try not to interpret it. Our problem is that anxiety get to this relaxed place. Let's have a look at some techniques. How to manage nerves then? Well, anxiety is really about mindset. It's about perceiving a threat. So we need to change this mindset, making the brain and body see no threat. How can we do this? A few ways. First of all, preparation. You're already doing the right thing. You're here taking this Udemy course, and I'm sure you're practicing outside of the course as well. The more that you prepare, the more you'll feel in control of the situation. People tend to feel very nervous when they don't feel in control. The more you prepare, the more control, the more command, the less nervousness you feel. Breathing exercises are very, very useful. It's basically a case of a sympathetic system that you can check it out, but it's not just words. Breathing exercises really do work. Perception. As mentioned, anxiety is about a perceived threat. So let's change that perception. Try to imagine that your speaking test is not really much of a test at all, but more of a friendly chat with someone who is curious about what you think. If you go in with too much of a test mindset, as we talked about much earlier, your language can become quite robotic anyway. It can become a little bit artificial. If you see it as more of a friendly chat, your language will probably be more natural and your nerves will mostly disappear as a result. You wouldn't be nervous if you were talking to a friend. So try to perceive it as a friendly chat. Remember to just take one thing at a time. Try not to over-anticipate. We've talked about this with regards to idioms, but it's also true with regards to anxiety. If you try to imagine the future and what questions you're going to get and how you're going to answer them, that will only fill you with dread. Again, it's about control. You're trying to control the situation. Try to let go of that need for control. Once you're in the exam and you've got no more time to prepare, just let that go and just let what happens happen. Try to recognize your anxiety. Don't try to ignore the anxiety, as it will only kind of creep up on you. Recognize it, acknowledge it, and then just sort of let it wash over you if you can. Try not to do anything about it. This is the essence of meditation, really. Focus on a feeling and just let it go, let it pass. If that doesn't help enough, just think about your feet on the ground, okay? I don't know why this works exactly, but just considering your feet on the ground and that you're grounded this case, we can actually use idioms to express this anxiety and this forgetfulness, and thus demonstrate another layer to our English command. Shows greater lexical resource and therefore might improve your score. If you feel this kind of anxiety when answering about forgetting words or forgetting questions, instead of stalling for time by using try using these idioms instead. Now, before starting your answer, if you can't think of what to say, you might say, "I'm sorry, can you give me a moment? My mind just went blank," or "My mind has just gone blank." So you can either use that in the past simple or in the present perfect. If you forget a particular word, you can say, "One moment, it's on the tip of my tongue," and you would say it like this with an upward inflection. Hopefully the word would then come, but if it doesn't, as we've talked about, it's okay to say you can't remember the word. If you've forgotten the question, you can ask again by saying, "Sorry, could I please have the question again? My mind went offline for a moment there." Okay, my mind went offline. You can also use the "my mind's just gone blank" or "my mind just went blank." And if you're sort of losing track of what you're saying in a part 2 segment, you can say, "Oh, sorry, I'll just start that bit again." And then you might not actually feel it. One final point to mention in terms of anxiety is that although IELTS is very important for many of you, absolutely, you can always take the exam again. It's not like there's this one shot and that's it. Even if you have deadlines, I'm sure that you can apply later on, and maybe you miss this deadline, you try later. So try not to get caught up in this only one shot frame of mind. Again, that mindset is so important. There's no threat here. It's just a friendly chat. You can do your breathing exercises, and you may even be able to use anxiety to improve your score. Having spoken in the previous lecture about anxiety, this lecture is going to look at something that should really help to manage and reduce that anxiety, and that's getting guidance in your speaking practice. So important to mention. We need to look at why you need guidance instead of just practicing alone. Error correction, first of all. If you're making errors and you're practicing alone, you may not be aware of them. Fluency practice. It's very difficult to have a conversation with yourself, and as a result, it's very difficult alone. You have some good days, you have some bad days, sometimes you leave it for a long time. When you get guidance, you'll have another person there to push you consistently and to make sure that you're always attending your own practice. Similar to that is encouragement. Not only will another person make sure you are consistently practicing, but they will encourage you in the process. Maybe you have a day where you're not feeling so motivated, and so the person who's guiding you will push you and say, you can do this, and really give you the strength to keep going. New vocabulary, of course, very important for lexical resource. When you get guidance for someone, they will be able to teach you new words and expressions and idioms. And generally, I think it's a lot more fun, particularly in terms of speaking practice. Practicing alone can be very dull, and that can chip away at your motivation. But if you're practicing with somebody else, you might enjoy the process more, and you're more likely to continue your preparation and your practice, and that will only help your speaking. So, what are our options when it comes to guidance? Well, there are a number of options for those who wish to get guidance in their speaking preparation, and here are just a few. There are language exchange sites. You can just enter this into Google and there'll be plenty of options that come up on the first page. There are language exchange apps. Now, I don't know of particular names of these apps, but I've been told by students that they use apps to get language exchange sessions, and both of these sites and these apps, they work on the basis of somebody wants to learn the language that you speak and you want to learn the language that they speak. So you spend half an hour speaking in their language and then you spend half an hour speaking in your own language. So it's like a mutual beneficial hour. Study buddies are very good. You can find them locally. If you put up adverts in your local shop or library, you can usually find them, or you can find them online as well if you search in the right places. Native speakers, of course, if you have a native speaker in your area, that's excellent. You don't have to have a native speaker to study with someone. You certainly, if you're very serious about your preparation and you want to make sure you have the best preparation you could possibly have, professional IELTS tutors are definitely the way to go. That's my firm belief, at least. This is the best kind of preparation you can possibly have if that's what you want. There are a number of IELTS teachers online, so you've got plenty of options. There are sites like italki.com, cafetalk.com, verbling.com, and plenty more. However, these sites, they offer general English lessons, business English lessons, exam English lessons, aviation English, medical English. They offer a lot of different things. There are not many sites which only offer IELTS-based English lessons. But there is one site, and that is theieltsteacher.com, which is my site. Everything that you have learnt about in this course has come from my experience of hugely experienced, highly qualified and super friendly teachers who have been selected on the basis of their deep, thorough understanding of IELTS and their unrivaled knowledge about what it takes to succeed in the exam. It's important to say here that we do not do big business contracts with huge multinational companies, nothing like that. We're very much a one-on-one, personal, friendly online language school who focus exclusively on teaching people like you who really just want to move up to the next band score and achieve their desired goals in IELTS. Now, these teachers, myself included, pride themselves on their and we will turn those weaknesses into strengths, and we'll have a good time doing it as well, really boosting your confidence along the way. Please get in touch for a free 20-minute demo lesson at theieltsteacher.com. As I said, we've got a number of teachers there, and any of them will be happy to hear from you. If you do have any more questions related to our lessons, please get in touch. Remember, you can always send me an email at matt@theieltsteacher.com as well. Hopefully we might be receiving an email from you soon, but even if not, as always, keep up with the practice, and I hope you enjoy these final 2 lectures coming up. In this lecture, we're going to talk about some tips and techniques which maybe didn't fit in any of the other parts of the course, but are still going to be very useful for helping you to improve your score overall in the IELTS speaking test. And some of these may be referred to as secrets to success. So let's have a look at 4 of these different tips and techniques. If you were a native speaker of English, you probably wouldn't have understood me. I actually have a very good friend who speaks very quickly all the time, and we always have to tell him to slow down because nobody can understand him. So in the exam, speaking very quickly is not like it. You shouldn't do that really. You've got more chance of making a mistake and you've got more chance of the examiner not understanding you. But it's not just about being taught to do so. Increasing your speed also happens to people who are very anxious. We've spoken about anxiety and handling it. Just remember, if you notice yourself speaking more quickly as a result of nervousness, take a deep breath and just bring the pace down. And just keep doing that whenever you notice it. This happens quite a lot in part 2 actually. Get a bit nervous towards the end of the part 2 speaking, and so people's speed tends to pick up. We need to bring it back down again. The second secret is body paragraphs. What do I mean by this? Well, we've already discussed the strategy of listing that you can use in part 3 answers to develop your idea. Well, listing is actually a way of developing an initial idea when writing a body paragraph in a writing task 2 essay. So try to treat your part 3 answers in speaking like you would body paragraphs in writing task 2. Think about all the ways that you can develop an idea in a body paragraph in the essay part of the exam. So you can start with an idea, you support the idea, you give an example to support the supporting point, then you give an alternative and a result of the alternative. This strategy here, this body paragraph strategy, you can actually find on YouTube if you look up my video. Will give you a clear sense of organization in your answers. It's a great opportunity to use discourse markers as well, and it gives you lots of room for developing your original idea. So, part 3 answers, just like body paragraphs in writing task 2. Secret number 3, avoid trousers and shoes. What do I mean by this? Well, if you have to answer a question about this, avoid choosing trousers, shoes, boots, pants, socks, or any other garment that will cause confusion in terms of singular and plural forms. If you choose the word shoes, not only will there be picking out a shirt, jacket, dress, coat, hat, tie, any other simply singular noun. And while we're on the topic of clothes, another very common mistake people make is they will refer to clothes in a singular sense, but clothes is always plural. My clothes are dark, his clothes are expensive. If you want to refer to an item in the singular, then you need to say an item of clothing or a piece of clothing, or just refer to the item itself, like a dress or a skirt or a tie. One other common mistake with this word is the pronunciation of it. The word clothes is often very difficult for people to say. The most common mistake people make is to pronounce it with two syllables. Clothes, clothes. But we should never do this. Clothes is a single syllable, one syllable only. And so some people will say, I'm wearing some clothes, and they don't pronounce the S because it's quite difficult to go from the to s. But the most important sound in this word is the z at the end, close, close. So a lot of native speakers, when they're speaking quickly, they will, without realizing it, drop the th sound. And so the word itself ends up sounding like close, like to close a door. If you struggle with pronouncing the word close, I like to wear warm clothes in the winter. There, I dropped the th, and you probably didn't even notice. Okay, final secret here, question tags. Part 3 of the speaking test is referred to as the discussion stage, but there's not really much of a discussion happening here. It's just you're being asked a question and you're answering the question, and then you move to a different question. So we can change that a little bit. Bringing in question tags to emphasize our points can make it seem as though the examiner is a bit more involved and can give us a much stronger sense of command over the language. Now, the type of question tag I'm talking about here is not in the form of a question. It's not like, this is the way to the train station, isn't it? Developing countries to pay the price for our environmental mistakes, is it? So notice the pronunciation here, the intonation. With a question, we go up at the end with a question tag. But with a statement where we're really kind of emphasizing our points and we're creating a statement with shared knowledge with the examiner as if he's likely to agree with us and we both know this thing, then we go downwards in our intonation. Is there? Is it? Is there? Is it? Not. Is there? Is it? Now this takes a bit of practice. So you need to practice this quite a bit. From what I found with my students is it doesn't come naturally the first time. So a bit of practice with a downward intonation. And a negative question tag. I don't have an example here, but you can imagine it. It would be, it is, isn't it? So hopefully those are a couple of points that may help to just give you a little bit more confidence when going into the exam. Like I say, they're sort of assorted secrets, didn't really fit into any of the other parts, so we'll add them here. If you have any other secrets that you found very useful in terms of your speaking, please add them to the discussion and let me know, and maybe I'll add to this lecture in the future. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Okay, here we are then in our final lecture, and in this final lecture we are going to listen to a model IELTS speaking answer the whole way through. So part 1, part 2 and part 3 spoken to a band 9 level. This lecture won't really involve any tuition, but if you want to make the most out of it, I would suggest that as you are listening to these answers, I want you to think about which of the skills across all 4 of the band descriptor categories I am using. So which skills am I using when I respond to the question? I'd like to begin by talking to you about your school life. Did you go to secondary school near to where you lived, and why or why not? Yes, I did. Well, sort of near. We lived a couple of kilometres from school, so it only took about 20 minutes to get there on foot, a few minutes by car. What did you like about your secondary school? The thing I liked most about my secondary school was probably my friends. To be honest, I think the quality of education was quite poor though, but I enjoyed playing football with my mates at lunchtimes and they've stayed my friends for life. Well, as I've said, the teaching staff could have been better, though maybe they've hired all new staff by now. Perhaps if the old teachers had been trained more in classroom management, the students would have been more engaged. Did you continue studying after you finished school? Yes, I did. I continued my studies at Plymouth University, down in the southwest of England, where I enrolled in a bachelor's degree course in English language. I went there straight after secondary school, and I was there for 3 years. In what ways is higher education different to school? Well, firstly, I found that the experience of independent study was totally different to secondary school. You're given much less guidance and you have to work out a lot on your own, and that transition can be pretty difficult. Secondly, another big difference is the social side. You're meeting new people all the time, which is another world to that of secondary school where you know all your friends. Moving to part 2, the long turn, here is the topic that we're going to cover. Describe something you don't have now, but would really like to own in the future. You should say what this thing is, and make some notes to help you if you wish. Your time to plan begins now. Now here, I'm going to show you my plan that I've written. And you may just want to take a moment to think about how you would put this together in a part 2 talk. When you're ready, press play and we'll continue. Okay. I'm going to talk about a bike I'd like to have in the future. This is a touring bike, which means it's made for long trips, and it's called the Surly Disc Trucker. I've wanted to own this bike for a few years now, ever since I first became interested in bike touring back when I was in my 3rd year at university. I remember seeing a particular documentary on bike touring, and although the bike in question wasn't being ridden, I ended up doing a lot of research and quickly came across this special bike. As for where I first saw it, as I just mentioned, I was researching bike touring at the time, checking out a lot of magazines, websites and forums. My first sight of the bike was in a top 10 list of the best bikes for touring. It was love at first sight, though I knew I couldn't afford it. I ended up getting the cheaper version, without disc brakes, second hand off of eBay. My brother and I drove 3 hours to pick it up, and it was too big for me, but I just had to get used to it. I ended up calling it the Horse. Thinking about why I'd like to own it, there is one main reason. As I the disc trucker, I would have felt a fair bit safer. For instance, I've had a few near misses already on my. Do you think televisions and films can make people want to get new possessions? And why do they have this effect? Yes, I do. Speaking from experience, there have been a number of times when I've been influenced by television and films in this way, and I'm sure other people are no different. For example, the new bike I was talking about earlier, that all came through the result of watching a TV documentary on bike touring. Although the show wasn't advertising a particular bike, I still became hooked on the idea of going bike touring. And of course, I needed a new bike to do that. I guess TV and films do this by tapping into people's inner desires, but I'm not sure it's always intentional. Celebrities are another important part of it, though I've never really been interested in celebrity lives. It's for society. First of all, when people go shopping and buy new things, this generates profits for businesses. These profits are then taxed, and society ideally reaps the spoils from these taxes, such as through greater healthcare and welfare spending. Secondly, such consumerist desires may inspire innovation. For example, many of the products we own today, our laptops, tablets, and iPhones, are the result of our demand for something new and original. If people didn't want to buy new things, these products might have never been invented. Do you think people will consider that having lots of possessions is a sign of success in the future, and why? I'm not sure about this one. I certainly think it's true that many people today consider this a sign of success, but equally, there are more and more people who are moving towards a more minimal lifestyle. What I hope will happen is that people will consider values like family. But I hope I'm wrong. Okay, that is the end of the exam. Now, I just want to draw your attention towards the clock at the bottom of the screen here, the timer, and you'll probably see that it's around about 10 minutes. And as we know, the speaking test is supposed to be around 11 to 14 minutes. It can be a bit shorter, but it's supposed to be 11 to 14. Do bear in mind that we didn't go through the whole minute of planning in part 2. Although there was an introduction part as well. But just think about the fact that I am a native speaker and that I move through these answers quite confidently, quite quickly. When you're actually sitting in the exam, of course, there's probably going to be a fair amount of hesitation, ideally not so much, but there inevitably will be. And that will probably bring up the time to more 11 to 14 minutes. So don't worry too much about the timing there. But we're going to wrap up this course here, and I think this is a good stage because it's a stage that you can go back to time and time again, watch this video time and time again. As well. We are pronouncing correctly, all the intonation is appropriate, we're stressing words that should be stressed in sentences, and we're stressing syllables that should be stressed within words. And all our vowel and consonant sounds are accurate as well. In terms of lexical resource, there's a great range of vocabulary here, despite the fact that much of this is based on the same topic. Something to just think about when it comes to your speaking is that speaking is not like writing. When you're writing, yes, a really wide range of complicated vocabulary can, at times, be quite helpful, but it certainly seems a little bit out of place when it comes to the speaking. Speaking, you're in a better position because you don't need such advanced vocabulary. It just needs to be natural with a decent amount of paraphrasing and collocation. And finally, you can see a number of grammatical structures being used here. We even had a mixed conditional come in here. Maybe you can go back and try and find it. But conditionals came in here, complex sentences, and there's plenty of grammatical accuracy as well. So covering all four of the band descriptor categories in a good and confident response. I hope you've enjoyed this course. If you have, please leave a rating. If you haven't, please leave a rating as well. Please let me know what you would have liked to have seen different or what you thought could have been a bit better. As always, best of luck in your exams. If you're taking an exam soon, please let me know. I'd love to hear about your results when they come